Most beginner Unity scripts work, but they quickly become very messy. Fields are everywhere, methods are public for no reason, random variables named foo and bar appear in the script, and you have no idea what any variable or the script itself actually does. Today, I'll show you how to structure your Unity scripts properly using the principles of clean code. Clean code is that when the code is readable, it's organized, it's intentional, and it's easy to modify later. It's not about being fancy in any way, it's just about future you and other programmers being able to read and understand your code properly. Let's just take this script as an example. Well, here we have a public class called shoot. So exactly what does this class do? It shoots something. Is it the enemy that shoots? Is it the player that shoots? Does it shoot something entirely else? Is it for filming something? We have no idea. We have a private float called foo, public string called bar, protected int called myInt. What does any of these variables do? We have no idea. Then we have the start method where the variable bar is set to be okay. And we have a comment which says that the variable bar is set to be okay. Then we have another field, a bool, not true, set to true. Yeah, you kind of get the idea. This script makes absolutely no sense. It has no real spacing. The order of how we do things is non-existent, and it's littered with comments telling us what we already know, but not explaining what it actually does. And this is a prime example of bad programming. Instead, let's go to this script called boulder behavior. Here we have a common clean structure. At the top, we have all of our fields. First, we have our serialized field. Then we have our private fields. No properties in this script, but let's just create one now. Let's create a public integer. Let's name it count. And let's set a get and a private set. So now that we have all our fields at the top, then comes the built-in Unity methods, which in this case is start and update. And then we have the methods we've created ourselves, like calculate screen boundaries, move boulder, and respawn boulder. So that is normally the order you would keep in your scripts to keep it clean and organized. Now let's just quickly go over the access modifiers. Here we've used a serialized field for a private float called boulder speed. That is because that we would like to set our boulder speed in the inspector. We are able to do this by using the serialized field, and we can edit this in the inspector instead of having to go inside our script each time we want to change the speed of our boulder. Then we have set these fields to private, as these do not need to be accessed by any other classes. A good rule of thumb is always set your variables or your methods to be private unless you absolutely must set it to be public. We set our property when we want to access a variable from this class from another class. So let's say we wanted to access our count inside our condition handler script for some reason, then we can access it because it's a property. Notice that we have the get, but the private set. That means that we can get it from this class, but we can't actually change the variable. That's why it uses a private set. The value of the variable can only be set from inside this class. Also notice that we've capitalized the word count, even though normal C# syntax uses what is called camel casing, where you have, for instance, two words like screen and top. The first word is non-capitalized with this S, and then when you enter a new word, then you capitalize the first letter. But when creating properties or methods for that matter, then you use what is called Pascal casing. That is when the first letter of each word is capitalized. As you can see in the name of this method, in every word, the first letter is capitalized. So when do we actually need to use public? Well, in this script for the game I've created here, I have a score manager script where I have a public method called add score. In the context of this game, this needs to be called from inside the script boulder behavior. That's why I've set it to public. So I need to access it from somewhere else. As you can see, I call it inside my respawn boulder method. And now that we're on the subject of method, let's just go over naming principles. Bad names for methods and variables are names like do action, myInt, foo, bar, because the reason for naming your variables and your methods is to make the code self-explanatory. So when I have a method called doAction, as a reader, you have no idea what this method does. But when we have a method like moveBoulder, we have a good idea what this does. It probably moves the boulder. It's also a good idea to keep your methods relatively short. This is called the level of abstraction. So as a good rule of thumb, a method or a class should have as few abstraction levels as possible, meaning that they should do as few things as possible. So we have the method moveBoulder. The only thing that this method does is move the boulder. Here we have two levels of abstraction in respawn boulder. It finds the float random x and it respawns the boulder. So it has two levels of abstraction. So what you actually could do to keep this at one level of abstraction instead of two levels is that you could highlight this line, which finds the random x position, hold down left control and press the period sign, and then use this menu to extract the method. We could call this method find random x position. And now instead of this method having two levels of abstraction, you now have two methods with one level of abstraction each. I will, however, keep this to one method with two levels of abstraction, as I still find this level of abstraction clean enough for my code. So by using the combination of the order of the script and the method name and the level of abstraction, we already know that this method moves the boulder, and that's why I don't need to add comments like this moves the boulder, because this is pretty self-explanatory. A good rule of thumb is also that if your script needs a lot of comments, then your script is not very well written. That is because you need your comments to explain what the script actually does, instead of just making it self-explanatory with your naming of variables and methods. Notice also that I like to keep a bit of spacing in my scripts. Even though that all these fields are private, I still keep a space between them. That is because that these private floats are for creating the screen boundaries, while this is for instantiating the score manager. So these two groups of variables does something entirely different. That's why I keep them separated by spacing to make them more readable. So just to quickly summarize, keep fields grouped and organized. Use serialized field instead of public if you have to change your variables outside in the inspector. Keep them private by default. Create small focused methods and classes with low levels of abstraction. Have a clear naming and try as much as you can to keep it to one or two responsibilities per script. I hope this video helped you out. Thank you for watching.